A new life started where others are laid to rest. It's right there in the vows uttered in innumerable weddings each year, till death do us part. So it should come as no surprise that some couples want to highlight their hopefully eternal bond by marrying in a cemetery. Ronald Reagan married his first wife in a cemetery, Jane Wyman. That's surprising. Cemetery weddings are nothing new. Jews lived in Eastern Europe and in the United States sometimes held weddings and ceremonies during times of mass disease, like during the 1980 influenza, in the belief that having the ceremony in the presence of the dead might bring about better times. In the United States, Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Glendale, California, became a popular site for weddings after it opened in 1906. In 1940, Ronald Reagan chose it as a venue for his marriage to his first wife, the actress Jane Wyman. For most of the 20th century, though, cemeteries were cordoned off in the American imagination as morbid spaces one did not visit unless necessary. This has changed with the recent positive death movement, which has sought to remake the cemetery as a place of exploration and even celebration. Every year we get more and more requests, said Richard Harker, the executive director of the foundation that operates the Oakland Cemetery in Atlanta. He said that last year Oakland hosted 36 weddings and 25 funerals, but holding a cemetery wedding does not present challenges that marrying in a hotel ballroom or chapel might not, and below is some advice for those who have been through the experience. The reasons vary. The decision can be deeply personal. This was the case for Sabrina Gandara, 38, of Portland, Oregon, who works in a retirement community. In 2019, she married Andrew Rodriguez, 37, a service writer for a car dealership, while standing over the grave of her grandfather, Joe Gardana II, at the Fairhaven Memorial Park in Santa Ana, California. And Miss Gardana said, "Growing up, I was my grandpa's baby. She and her grandfather used to talk each evening on the phone," she said, and he had promised to walk her down the aisle when she got married, but he died in 2007. Marrying at his gravesite was the way to stay true to his vow. "If my grandfather could not walk me down the aisle, then I could walk down the aisle to my grandfather," Miss Gardana said in the text message. Sometimes a decision comes out of the blue. Shelby Privat, a 30-year-old therapist in private practice, was scouting for a wedding location in Richmond, Virginia, when her mother offered a surprising suggestion. The historic Hollywood Cemetery in Richmond, the 135-acre final resting place of two former U.S. presidents, James Monroe and John Tyler. Miss Privat was intrigued. The first trip she had taken with her husband-to-be, Zach Cowell, 31, a director of digital marketing, was to a music performance at the congressional ceremony in Washington. The couple, who now live in Bangor, Maine, had their wedding ceremony at the Hollywood Cemetery in 2022. "We think about our wedding all the time," Ms. Privat said. "It's one of the most special moments that we've had. I don't have any regrets," she said. It's an affordable option. The restrictions that a cemetery is likely to place on the size and scope of events may make it a perfect option for couples on a budget who want to have an intimate but memorable ceremony. More and more people are realizing they want to save money for a down payment on a house, and they'd rather have a small, simple wedding, said Caroline Dubois, the president of the New York Marble Cemetery in the East Village neighborhood of Manhattan. "It costs $5,000 to rent out the cemetery intimate garden," Ms. Dubois said. Ms. Privat said that to hold her wedding at Hollywood Cemetery, she donated $2,500. In comparison, the average wedding venue in 2023 cost $12,800, according to a survey conducted by the Knot. Research the history. "I would recommend that the celebrants focus on the historic aspect of the venue," said Paul Williams, superintendent of Oak Hill Cemetery in Washington, where the longtime Washington Post publisher Katharine Graham is buried. Weddings and other private events are held in the cemetery's Renwick Chapel. To marry at the Greenwood Cemetery in Brooklyn, which no longer accepts wedding reservations, is to consort with the ghosts of the composer Leonard Bernstein and the painter Jean-Michel Basquiat. Forest Lawn Memorial Park is brimming with Hollywood A-listers, Walt Disney, Sammy Davis Jr., and Michael Jackson, to name a few. At the same time, history can be complicated and painful. The Hollywood Cemetery in Richmond is home to many Confederate leaders, including Jefferson Davis and J.E.B. Stuart. The cemetery does not advertise the fact that Miss Pravat said she knew they were interred there. And that was always something where we wanted to make sure we were mindful of, not in any way making that history a part of our day celebration, Ms. Pravat said in an email. Our way of doing so was to ensure we remained in a different part of the cemetery. Learn the rules. Logistically, there are challenges, said Lauren Purcell, who plans high-end weddings in the Washington area. In 2018, she worked with a couple who married at the Congressional Cemetery, whose 70,000 permanent residents include the notorious FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover and Marion Barry, the former mayor of Washington. Cemeteries are not hotels. Each one will have unique facilities, quirks, and rules for a prospective wedding party to consider. Oakland Cemetery in Atlanta has 7 wedding venues. They include a bell tower dating 1899, 2 lawns able to hold 200 guests each, a former women's comfort station built in 1908 and remodeled into an indoor venue, and 3 mausoleums. We have a coordinator who works with the bride and groom. Mr. Harker said couples are asked to choose vendors from a list provided by the cemetery, and if they don't, they are charged an extra fee. At the marble ceremony in the East Village, the scope of the ceremony is constrained by the presence of underground vaults holding human remains from the 19th century. We don't allow dancing, Mr. Dubois said. We don't allow live music. Her guidelines for events run to 18 pages. We have lots of rules, she said. At the Congressional Cemetery in Washington, Ms. Purcell could walk only on the established paths during the ceremony, and vendors were given only narrow windows of time outside of regular visit hours during which they could prepare the site. We had a full reception there, Ms. Purcell said. We had dinner, a bar, a band, and dancing, almost entirely conducted on the cemetery's paths, she said. Some couples may hold the ceremony at a cemetery and then move the reception elsewhere, Mr. Cowell, Ms. Pravat's husband, said. After the ceremony at the Hollywood Cemetery, the wedding party celebrated at the nearby Jefferson Hotel. Officiant considerations. Agreeing to officiate a cemetery wedding could also introduce challenges as well as opportunities for reflection. Look at the land, look at the layout, make sure that you're comfortable officiating in that space, said Louis King, director of American Marriage Ministries, which ordains wedding officiants. You have a certain responsibility to do justice to the venue. Done right, a cemetery wedding can refresh a rite that often succumbs to logistical anxieties or the need for one Instagram-worthy moment after another. There's nothing like death, after all, to focus the mind on what matters in life. There's so much love and life in a cemetery. Laura Lavelle, who works at Oak Hill in Washington, said, it can hold sadness and happiness. It can hold grief and joy. This is from New York Times on DNYUZ. I never even knew that you could have wedding ceremonies in a cemetery, and they're much cheaper, obviously. Please leave your comments, and thank you for your support. Please support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.